I'm Dr. Erica Bove, and welcome to the Love and Science podcast. I'm your host, and also the founder of Love and Science, Thriving Through Infertility. I'm so excited you're here today. With over a decade of experience helping thousands of women just like you, I empower professional women to build their families with confidence and compassion. Let's dive in. Hello, my loves, and welcome back to the Love and Science podcast. I am so excited to have a distinguished guest today. This is Dr. Laura McGevna. She is a board-certified dermatologist, our first dermatologist to be on the Love and Science show. And she is an amazing human. She's actually my personal dermatologist. She's also a friend from medical school, and we know how deep those connections run. And she is going to elucidate for us today a lot of the questions we have about skincare and hair care, right, as we are undergoing fertility treatments. So she is the CEO and founder of SWAE Skin Dermatology, which is dedicated to enhancing self-health outcomes. And it's a holistic approach, right? So, and that's why I love going to her so much, is because it's really a whole person approach to care. And as we think about all aspects of health at Love and Science, it's really, let's get to the root. Let's figure out how we can integrate to have the best outcomes. So welcome, Dr. Laura. It's so wonderful to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me, my beautiful, wonderful friend. It's so nice to connect, and I feel honored to be on your show. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. I can't wait. I mean, and I pulled the people. People have questions, let me tell you. So, I would love to ask you the question, even though I know like your dermatology, and I think dermatologists and skin and everything, people have so many questions about hair.
Oh,
And,
sure.
and I can talk about that too from my perspective as an REI, but you go through an IVF cycle, you lose 40% of your hair. Like, what is that about? What can be done? Because, it's not that we're vain, but I think we have a certain like concept of our self-image, and that often involves the hair that we have on our heads. And so, we know that hair follicles have life cycles and that oftentimes the hair follicles are kind of intentionally out of sync with each other, but the hormones, they just put everything in sync so that that phase of the hair follicles and the hair falling out, that all happens at once. Is there anything we can do to help with that, to accelerate the regrowth? What are your thoughts about that?
Sure. Well, yeah, the hard part about it is that it is true, despite any, you want to put your thoughts on your image aside. And, a lot of the time we try to say, divorce ourselves from that aspect of life, knowing that it's so separate from, and not obviously the important part of the work that we do. But it is so hard. It's human nature to kind of think about hair and link it to health. And so when we see this happen to us and to our patients and our friends, it can be really unsettling, and it can be really hard as you're going through it. So, yes, there are things that we can do, fortunately. And, the hard part is there are actually a few different types of hair loss. And so I think it's really important to not minimize it and talk about the type of or the um, thing that's happening to us, and then that way we can kind of investigate and see, well, what is the thing that's causing it? Despite the fact that we try to, when you're going through something like this process and it's so hard on your body, and you try to take such good care of yourself as you're going through the process of the fertility journey, it can be such a struggle. And in that struggle, our stress levels go up. And unfortunately, when the stress levels go up, it's rough on the body, and it's rough on the delicate hair. And that can really catapult people from a growing phase of hair into a rapidly shedding phase of hair. Just like you see, after sometimes people lose their hair after, a significant surgery or a car accident. It really is a lot for the body to kind of take in a short period of time. And the hair follicle, which is one of our most rapidly turning over cells, it really takes the hit. So it pushes
Yeah.
us into that telogen cycle. For many people, that's the kind of type of hair loss, which the good part about it is, fortunately, it's a non-scarring loss, and the hair is going to come back. It doesn't feel any better sometimes to know that, but you can try to take heart knowing, okay, this hair is going to come back. Yeah, just to rewind a little bit. So if we're losing our hair in the process of telogen effluvium and the stress of the um, cycle, then one of the things we can do, the most important thing we can do, is really take care of the hair itself and take care of our bodies. Do our best to kind of minimize our stress levels as hard as that can be. That's actually really helpful if you can do that and kind of, if you meditate or go for a walk or do anything you can to take care of yourself as a human, that will ultimately make its way to the hair follicle, and you'll get through that process a little bit easier. The other thing you can do for telogen effluvium is really just supportive care. So you want to make sure that you're not using, hot combs, hot irons, hot hair, hot, blowing cycles if you're, doing blow styling. And you want to try to minimize things that put pressure on the hair follicle itself too. So like if you're, sometimes we wear our hair in a kind of a tight style. So you want to try to make sure that you're not pulling your hair back too tight and you're being really gentle with the whole process, gentle on yourself and gentle on your hair. That can help. There are lots of things that people try to as they're going through a hair loss process. Sometimes shampoos that are kind of good for the scalp that have things like tea tree oil if you're not allergic, or rosemary oil. Those things can be helpful for hair growth. Sometimes people can try, if it's really you're feeling desperate and you want to try something else, you can try a little ketoconazole shampoo. You can get that over the counter. You can ask your provider for a prescription. You leave it on for a few minutes, and it can really, you leave it more as a treatment for the hair follicle, and you use it more as a scalp treatment than an actual shampoo, because it can be a little drying to the tresses. So you leave it on the top part of your scalp for a few minutes and rinse it off. And that simple use of ketoconazole shampoo, weaving it into your hair care procedures, that can grow that extends the cycle of anagen. So that can really help the growing phase of hair.
Oh,
Um,
I didn't know that. That's so interesting.
yeah, and it's a nice thing. It's just, it's a nice low risk intervention. And, it's good for people who sometimes, when we're going through these hormonal changes, we also get a flare of seborrheic dermatitis, the dandruff that's on the scalp. The scalp texture can change and feel a little bit different. You get a greasy, thick scale. And ketoconazole is a great treatment for that too. And it's extending the growth phase of our hair. So I think it's an excellent thing to make part of the practice of your styling, protocols that we all use.
Yeah,
Uh,
and maybe even preventatively. I mean, it's really hard to regrow the hair once it falls out, right? But like to kind of keep that anagen phase going longer, that seems to be something that could really make a difference, right? And especially say somebody's gone through IVF before, it's happened to them, probably more likely to happen again, that maybe is something very practical that people could incorporate in that's safe and effective. That's a great idea.
Yeah, and I don't, for telogen effluvium, for the type of loss that happens, with kind of these stressful times, I don't tend to recommend um, other products or interventions that are either more procedural or therapies like minoxidil. I don't recommend those products because you have to remember this is a short period of time, and those
Mhm.
aren't the greatest to use in that time. And honestly, the hair is going to come back. You just have to remind yourself that the hair is going to come back on the other side.
Yeah.
So,
And what I'm also hearing you say is like, so many of us, myself included, I'm raising my hand over here, like, we don't love the hair that we were born with, right? And we're like, oh, but I need to straighten it. Oh, but I need to blow
yep.
dry it. Oh, but I need to like do XYZ. And, there was a period over the summer where I don't know, it was like humid and I was busy and like I just kind of like let my hair like naturally be its natural self. And I got so many compliments and I was like,
I bet
well,
it was
this is
beautiful.
well, this is what you see right now is not. This is straightened hair for the
It
record.
was beautiful also. Yeah.
You're so kind. I love your hair too. But it's so funny that like so many of us don't embrace what we actually have. So we then go through this rigmarole of like changing And all those regimens actually make this problem worse. And so maybe for a time, especially since fertility treatments are so time consuming and we're trying to be doctors and patients and running all over creation to the fertility clinics, like what if we just said, for this period of time, I'm going to embrace my natural wave. I'm going to less is more, I'm just going to see how that goes. I think that might be something to consider because, it's the grass is always greener when it comes to hair, I think. But I think
Sure.
if we can start with that, that might also be of benefit. What do you think?
I think that's a great idea, and I
Yeah.
really encourage all of my loved ones and patients alike to um, do that very thing and really be gentle with their hair care and try to kind of go back to basics and um, really take care of themselves and take care of their scalp and their scalp hair. And a lot of the things that we do use, either heat or personal care products with things like mousses or hair straighteners or relaxers or dyes. Those things aren't great for the hair follicle anyway. Ideally, they're not great um, to use, certainly in excess during the fertility journey anyway. So, if we can kind of pare those back, then I think people will start to get into, we'll see that we all start to get into a little bit better rhythm. And then you'll start to gently notice the hair starting to come back. And that's
Yeah.
just a beautiful thing.
Yeah. How soon would you say, so say somebody does lose their hair, like how soon would you expect that they would have like their full head of hair back again with this problem?
And the hard part is it does take a little bit of time,
Yeah.
as
Like
soon as
months, few
it
months.
is months, it is
Yeah.
months. And so
Yeah.
that is hard as you're going through it. It can be many months. And on average, we counsel our patients between 6 to 12 months really
Wow.
before you see your hair kind of come back to its full luster.
Yeah.
But
So
the
we
fact
embrace what
is
is.
right, yeah, but it does come back, it does come back, and sometimes the things that you do, or that are available aren't the right thing, especially for a hair loss that happens in a stressful time. Now, obviously, there are other types of hair loss. There's hormone-based hair loss. Certain, medications or supplements can induce other types of loss with scarring and that type of thing. That's really quite rare. But, it's important if you're noticing these things, talk to your provider about them. Look, there are great resources nowadays, thankfully. Women are talking about their health more, and we're starting to kind of get a little bit um, more and more data in terms of women's health and these things that affect are unique to our experience. So I do look for resources, and I would definitely always encourage people to talk to their providers about it because you do want to pay attention. If it is something that does need more attention, do you intervene sooner, or is it something that you sit back and you say, okay, this is normal, it is part of this process, and it's going
Yeah.
to settle down the line.
Well, that makes so much sense. Thank you for helping. I think a lot of our listeners are going to take some practical tips from what you just said. Another question that we get commonly is about acne. And, acne can happen for so many reasons, but so many people who have infertility have the PCOS version of infertility and, years of sort of treating the acne with a birth control pill. Or maybe people don't even realize how much acne they have until they finally go off and they're like, oh my gosh, adult acne, what is happening? And it's just really pesky and annoying. But we also know that, the Retin A's, right, are not recommended during pregnancy or pregnancy at all because they're teratogenic, right? So what do you tell people? How do you help people with acne in a way that is both compatible with fertility treatments and an early pregnancy?
Sure, sure, great question, and it is one I do get a lot from the wonderful women I see. Part of the problem is acne can be so stubborn sometimes, and especially if people have the type of skin that tans easily, or if you've got darker skin types, a small bump can lead to lasting pigment changes down the
Hmm.
line. So a little spot can kind of uh, morph into something bigger, um, pretty quickly. And also, sometimes we see these things on our skin and we say, "What? That's not supposed to be there." And we have a tendency to pick at them. I know I do that myself too. It's
Mhm.
one of those things. So, sometimes the scratching cycle is worse than the actual acne itself.
Mm.
And there are lots of reasons that we get acne during these fertility treatments. Um, our hormones are we're constantly going through this cycle of treatment and timing um, and our stress levels are high. So our cortisol is up. And when cortisol is up, it's going to lead to acne on the skin. It's going to increase your oil production. And then there you go, you get acne form bumps from that. And then also at the hormonal changes, the cycle's in fluctuation. So then we see acne in that setting. So it can be tricky to manage. I do think it's important to gauge what type of acne a person is having or experiencing kind of early on. And you can just look at that by looking to see, are there more like blackheads and whiteheads? Are there more inflamed pus bumps? Or are there deep cystic nodules? And that kind of helps me categorize, okay, well, where am I going to go from here? There are lots of topicals that are great for mild to moderate acne and are really safe in pregnancy. A personal favorite of mine is azelaic acid. It's a great drug. It's from a cereal grain. It's a naturally occurring compound, and it's great for hyperpigmentation and it's great for acne. It's available in two strengths, I think, and then you can get, of course, a version of it over the counter, but two prescription strengths. One is a 15 and one is a 20. The 20% has been shown to be safe in the fertility journey. So that's one of my immediate go-tos. And I usually have the person do it 2 times a day, on clean skin. So using azelaic acid is that's a great first step. You can also use products like clindamycin or erythromycin, which are also really readily available.
So I'm hearing you say that people should see a dermatologist, right, to kind of assess what kind of acne they have, and then the azelaic acid is safe while people are undergoing the fertility journey, which is I think really important because some people, even in the group that I pulled, their doctors told them that Retin A is safe, during this process in pregnancy, and I was like, oh gosh, that goes counter to everything I've ever read. As a board certified dermatologist, would you say that as that Retin A is safe or unsafe in
Well,
pregnancy?
that is so hard, a little bit tricky question in that, probably in limited doses and in small surface areas, it probably is safe. But truthfully, we don't have great data on it. There are case reports of bad outcomes, um, but those have not been shown in bigger studies. So that's where the rub is, right? So, and we know that some of the other products like tazarotene and isotretinoin, which are other retinoids, are really, quite frankly, dangerous in the fertility journey and should be totally avoided. So that's the hard part. We have these case reports of um, rare bad outcomes with tretinoin, and then but bigger studies really haven't shown it. That's very, very different for tazarotene, for Tazorac, the product is tazarotene or isotretinoin, where there really frankly is danger. But because there is danger, we know with the higher strength and
Mhm.
different isomers of those vitamin A derivatives, we tend to say, just try to avoid them. There are nice, safe products that you can feel really good about using, like azelaic acid or clindamycin or benzoyl peroxide, which is really great for, comedogenic or comedonal acne. So
Mhm. I
with
think that
seeking
makes
a dog.
sense. I mean, some people have gone through like 5+ IVF cycles to get to their baby finally, and it's like, okay, like going this time without the Retin A versus like even the very small chance of harm, in my mind, it's like risk benefit. You're right, like so many other safe products to consider. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's hard. I feel the same way about the GLP-1s. I don't exactly know how to counsel people at this moment in time in the data-free zone or paucity data zone, but it's like, I think
right,
we just
right.
have to do our best and say, well, there's biological plausibility that this might not be good. And and
And
do the
they're
best
great
we can
alternative.
with the alternatives. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they're great
Okay,
alternatives.
on a similar topic. So people ask me all the time about Botox,
Oh.
fillers, laser treatments, laser pills. I
Yeah,
can't tell you how much time I personally have spent on PubMed trying to find out the answers to these questions because I want to help my people, but
yeah,
it's not
yeah.
always clear.
It's
What are
not.
your no? So what are
No,
your thoughts about somebody who is either like, on the journey going through IVF or newly pregnant?
sure,
How do you counsel them in the absence of
sure.
data?
Sure. Well, that's the hard part. There really isn't great data for it. I would say that, as you're going through the fertility journey, um, there isn't great data for harm for Botox. So that's pretty good and that's pretty reassuring. Once a person is, you are relatively immunocompromised, though, once you're in the early stages of pregnancy, and it is a toxin. So it's not something that they're we it's not something that I think I could recommend to a patient. It doesn't feel the data isn't there to say that it's safe. So I would say
Right.
absolutely in that time, just avoid it completely. But in the fertility journey, if you know that you're going to a person or a provider who you trust and has beautiful technique, aseptic technique, and you're not going to, contract another infection or have other complications, which then might lead to further procedures, right? And not necessarily with Botox, but certainly sometimes that can happen with filler. And people can get paradoxical immune reactions with filler. So I tend to say, I tend to discourage people from going to those products during the fertility process, um, specifically with filler. I feel less strong about Botox, but certainly once at the time of conception, that I would say then you should, the person, it would be in their
Yeah.
best interest to take a break.
Yeah, so get it all out of your system and
Yeah,
make sure
exactly.
time it as well as you can and then abstain. Now, here's the thing. And one reason I love going to you, in your practice is because when I'm like, what about this on my face? What about this on my face? You're like, your face is perfect. Like just it's okay. Like, it's okay. Like love your face. Um, I hear all the time. I mean, I think, many people on the fertility journey, not everybody, but especially female physicians, oftentimes like late 30s, early 40s, mid 40s, already have complexes about age and wrinkles and hair turning gray and like not feeling cute, not feeling like young. And think of all these things that we do, right? Botox and expensive hair, face products and hair dye and all that. That's kind of in an effort to like make us keep looking younger, right? We're trying to kind of maintain this image of maybe not being our current age or whatever that is, this sort of youthful growth or expression. What do you think? What would you say to somebody where you're like, okay, you're on the fertility journey, maybe you have a few more wrinkles, maybe you have like some gray hair, maybe you can't do all the things you used to do to maintain your sort of model-esque appearance. Like, what would you tell them to just like, how would you help them love themselves even in the absence of the products that maybe bolstered their identity previously? I think that's kind of the heart of this, really.
It is so hard, and it gets harder every day. Number one, as we age, and number two, as the world is less kind to us as we age. And we see younger and younger people wanting to look younger and younger and younger, and these products being marketed and procedures being marketed to young
Hmm.
people. So it can be discouraging and it can be hard. And already, as you're going through the fertility journey, is incredibly hard in and of itself. We can be hard on ourselves. And I think the best advice I could give to, a loved one going through the process is to talk to themselves like they would talk to a friend. Because inevitably, a person would say, if you look at somebody with love and respect, you're going to see all the beautiful things that the person has, and you're going to remind them of all of those things. And then the wrinkles, they become part of what makes a person that beautiful and all of the experiences. And it is such a delicate time in life. but it's also a very finite time as you're going through the journey. It can seem like forever, but really in the end, it is a finite time. And so I do tend to discourage people from doing things that, number one, could put them at risk. Number two, could make them not feel like themselves. And number three, could add stress to the process. And I just say, embrace the beauty that you are and shine through. And then if there are things that you want to fix or that they bother you, let's look for ways to do it that are going to be supportive to you through the process, not going to potentially detract. And that's where those players like azelaic acid or hyaluronic acid or vitamin C serums or just a good self-care routine, they're going to really start to make people feel a little bit better in their skin. And I think at the end of the day, that is a hugely important process in and of itself, and probably the thing that we need to all, work to master every day.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And I mean, it comes back to mindful self-compassion, doesn't it? Right? When we can look at our friend and see them in their entirety as so beautiful, but then it's like, aren't we our own worst critics? We look in the mirror and we see this and that and the other that like is wrong or needs to be changed. But like that Photoshop version of ourselves, that's not really what I'm going for, really, what any of us, would go for to talk to a friend. And so I think just embracing ourselves at this life stage, this finite life stage, looking what options are available, keeping the skin moisturized, wearing sunscreen, maybe there's like a fun face mask you can do to kind of spice things up, but just really saying, okay, this is finite and I'm me. And, looking younger isn't necessarily better, right? Like, and,
Exactly.
thinking ourselves, like looking at ourselves like we would look at a friend and talking at ourselves, even in the mirror as we would a friend. And I think that's so beautiful. My goodness. Well, I can't think of any other better way to end our conversation than on that note. Is there any other thing that you would like our listeners to know about? I mean, we had some questions about melasma and we had some questions about like laser hair removal and safety of that. Like, um, we covered so many of the questions that our listeners really wanted to be answered. Is there any other thing from your dermatology perspective that you see commonly, in people in this population that you wanted to like reiterate or educate or empower? Because that's what we're all about here at Love and Science.
Well, I love that. And that's what makes this podcast so beautiful, and exciting to be a part of. I have to say, I do think melasma is really a fascinating thing that at the end of the day, one of the most important things we can do for melasma is really just sun protection. There is good data that you can spend money on fractionated, lasers and, procedures like IPL, these, big deal um, procedures, but then you step outside and you go in the sun and it comes right back, thing. And there is good data for tinted sunscreens for melasma because women with melasma are really sensitive even to visible light, and visible light really can augment the effects of UV and if you have a tinted sunscreen, it's got an iron oxide pigment, so you get the second barrier on top. And that's actually really great for melasma, just right there. That's
Yeah.
a
Well, you
nice.
introduced me to my lovely La Roche-Posay,
Good. Oh,
tinted sunscreen, which I still use, and I get coupons like all the time
I
in
do
my
love that one. Oh, I'm glad. I'm glad. Yeah, I do love that one. It's a really great product. And the Environmental Working Group, EWG.org, is a great place to try out your products. And you can just type the name of your product into EWG.org and they rate products. And then you can see if, okay, is this sunscreen one I want to use now, or is this one I want to save for, the next part of life, so yeah, I would say tinted mineral sunscreens are great for melasma, vitamin C serums, and again, there's that
yes.
powerhouse azelaic acid. But otherwise, yeah, I just feel so honored to have been here, and
Aw.
thank you for having me.
Thank you
I
so much. I know these are not all the last dermatological questions we will have. And so I would love to have you on again. And, it's just our community. I think people are so curious to know, what's out there and what's safe, what's not safe. And there's so much conflicting information. So just to share your experience, to share your ideas and also your perspective on how we, why we want these things, and sort of what does that mean, and how can we reframe and see ourselves in a different light too. I think that's really powerful as well. And I think, I tried Botox once, and like, I don't know, this is not to say anything sweeping against Botox, but like my face hurt. Felt really heavy. And I was like, I just put a toxin inside, and it was so expensive. I thought, like, of all the other things I could have spent my money on. Right.
And
Um,
sometimes people don't feel like themselves after Botox or a filler. And
yeah.
then that's hard if you look at yourself and you don't see yourself in the mirror. That is sometimes hard for people as they're kind of,
Yeah, yeah, it's so true. And again, if people want to use Botox, that is their choice. Everyone
sure.
needs to do what's best for them. But for me personally, I looked at like the price tag and how I felt and what it was, and I was like, you know what? I think if I had this much, discretionary money, I think I can think of so many other things I'd love to spend it on that will truly make me feel like a more vibrant version of myself. And I think that's what we're going for. So thank you for your friendship. Thank you for taking care of me. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with this community. And we will share everywhere in the show notes of how people can find you. Tell our listeners though, if they're, sort of curious, what's the best place to find you?
Well, you can find me on swaeskin.com, or I do have a page on Instagram, Dr. Laura, dr.laura.md, and look for me there. I talk a little bit about skin health, and, I'm happy to share.
Yes. And just SWAE, just to be clear, so SWAE is SWAESKIN, right?
Yes, exactly. Snow,
The
water,
logo is
air,
super
earth.
pretty. I love the
Oh,
logo. It's
thank
amazing.
you. Oh, you're lovely to say that. Thank you. That made me happy. Thank you.
Yay. Well, thanks again, Dr. Laura. Until the next time.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. Bye. Thank you for listening to the Love and Science podcast. I'm so glad you joined us today. If you found this conversation valuable, if you could please rate, review, and share this podcast with your trusted people, it would mean so much to me. If you want more tools to help you navigate the fertility journey, please book a discovery call with me today. The link is in the show notes. Please do not let infertility have the final word. I'm here to take the burden from you so that you can achieve your goal of building your family. In gratitude, this is Dr. Erica Bove. I'm rooting for you always.